I'd like to welcome everyone present at this meeting in the Civic Centre and also those observing the meeting on Microsoft Teams. The fire alarm procedure, there are no fire drills expected this evening, so in the event of an alarm sounding, please quickly make your way out of the building. There are 3 exits from this room which members can use to vacate the premises. Please switch mobile phones onto silent or switch them off. Take any calls outside the meeting room if you've got to. Do not leave any bags unaccompanied and/or report any unaccompanied bags. Remember to take any bags with you when you leave the meeting or it is concluded. This meeting may be subject to filming or audio recording by others in accordance with the Council's filming protocol. Anyone who remains in the meeting following this announcement will have deemed to have consented to allow their image to be recorded and broadcast. Right, I'll move on to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Julie, all advise.
We have apologies from Councillor Hammersley and Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Henshaw will act as substitute for Councillor Hammersley and Councillor Abbs will act as substitute for Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I do have one. Item 7 on the agenda is an application put in by myself. So I will be having to leave the meeting while that item is discussed. In the absence of Vice Chair Charles Hammersley, we would need to nominate a councillor to chair the meeting in my absence. I would suggest Councillor Swinscoe. Could I have a nomination? Nominated Councillor Clay. Could I have a vote on that, please? All those show, please. Thank you. So when it gets to item 7 and I leave the meeting, Councillor Swinscoe will take over and chair the item. Thank you. No other declarations of interest? No. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of April. Could I have a proposer? Councillor Swinscoe. Seconder. Councillor Abbs. Can I can I accept those as a true record? All in favour show, those who were there. Yeah, thank you. Move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is planning application reference 2022-0137 CLPD 22 Grisdale Rise, Forest Town, application for a lawful development certificate under the Town and Country Planning England Order 2015, change of use to existing dwelling, use class C3 to a children's care home for 1 number young person, use class C2. I invite the officer to present the item.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Committee members are advised that there's a typing mistake on the front page of the agenda. The application number for this application is 2024/0137/CLPD, which can be seen in the officer report. I think the typo stated that it was a 2022 application. Since the publication of the committee report, there's been 3 additional objection letters received raising concerns about the in respect of undesirable behaviour, increase in traffic, pedestrian safety, increase in crime, devaluation of property prices, parking, and increase in noise and disturbance. These issues are reflected in the committee report already. So what I present to you today is a certificate of lawful use application for the change of use of an existing dwelling house, use class C3, to a children's care home for one young person under use class C2 at number 22 Grisdale Rise in Forest Town. Grisdale Rise is a detached 4-bedroom property which is set back from the highway, situated at the northeastern corner of the cul-de-sac and accessed via a private driveway that leads to a large double garage. The proposal is for the house to accommodate one vulnerable child aged between 7 to 17 years old. The home will provide support for the young person who may have a range of complex individual needs. One member of staff will be required to sleep at the property overnight on a rota basis. The applicant describes the role of the staff at the property to be almost identical to that of a parent or a foster parent undertaking duties such as cooking meals, assisting the child with schoolwork, transporting the child to school and other necessary appointments, and providing emotional and physical support. The staff comprises of one registered manager who will be on site between the hours of 9 AM to 4 PM, Mondays to Fridays, as you can see on the rota sheet, and a small team of support workers who will be on site on a rota basis, with a maximum of 2 staff being on site at any one time. Rota changes occur, I think, roughly every 3 days, and the handover period will take place between 10 to 10:30. There's no statutory requirement to consult third parties in respect of applications for certificates of lawful proposed developments. The objections that have been summarised in the committee report are public objections. Given the nature of the application, the planning merits are not relevant. The proposal is assessed on a matter of fact and degree in determining this application and as to whether it constitutes a material change of use of the property or not. On balance, it's not considered that the proposed occupation and movement would give rise to a situation that is materially different to the existing situation. It's considered that one child, one carer and a manager would not lead to a significant increase in noise and disturbance that would be unacceptable in an established residential area and would lead to a materially different level of activity that would be expected from the existing use. Furthermore, there are no external changes proposed to the property, and therefore the proposed use would not alter the character and the appearance of the area. On this basis, the recommendation is to issue the certificate. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. I do think we've got speakers on this one, so could I invite Jane Gregory to the podium? Thank you, Jane. You've got 4 minutes when you're ready. If you just turn your mic on your, I think it's the main button.
The residents of Grisdale Rise in objecting to the change of use of number 22 into a children's home. We feel that it would be detrimental to the street in the following ways: increase in traffic and parking, noise and crime levels. Traffic and parking. We believe that there will be an increase in traffic to and from the property. We believe that staff starting on an early shift or leaving after a night shift are unlikely to be using public transport if they have access to a vehicle. There is mention of a pool car, which increases the number of vehicles at the property. Whilst there is parking space on the drive, because of its location, number 22 does not have any street parking in front of the property. A lot of residents of Grisdale Rise park on the street due to limited driveway space. We fear that we would end up having even more cars parked on the street, making it even more hazardous. Also, the part of the street where the property is located is used as a turning circle for people visiting the cul-de-sac. Cars parked in the turning circle would make it dangerous to turn. The street has many families on it, and an increase in traffic would make it dangerous for children when playing out, which they do. If the young person has severe issues, this may mean extra carers are needed to look after them, which would result in further traffic to the property. If the young person had a learning or physical difficulty and attended a school that was suited to their needs, this could mean that school transport, usually a minibus, would be part of the increase in traffic as well. Or if the young person were homeschooled, the teaching staff would also be coming and going. It is noted in the committee report that the current owners have said that sometimes there can be up to 6 cars parked at the property. With this in mind, and despite the fact that we want the change of use to be overturned, should it go ahead, we would want it as a planning condition that all employees, pool cars and visitors, including social workers and family visitors, up to the number of 6 vehicles are parked on the driveway or in the garage. Should this not be adhered to, we will be contacting planning enforcement regarding the matter. We feel that there will be an increase in noise, not only from more traffic, but also employees slamming car doors early in the morning. We have had reports of this happening around other homes. If the young person has learning difficulties and is non-verbal, their way of communicating may be loud and constant. Again, we have been given a similar example where this happened and residents could not use their gardens as the sound was so loud and distressing. Young people are also known to play music loudly, and the bass beat does reverberate quite a way, which is extremely annoying. Crime. We fear that there will be an increase in crime in the area. This is backed up by the police comments document, which says that this has happened around other similar homes in Nottinghamshire. We are also fearful that the young person may abscond from the property and cause damage to our property and vehicles. In a 2016 report, it noted that children in care are more likely to be subject to criminal proceedings, and most will relate to behaviour in the community. Assuming the police find the young person and return them, this is yet more traffic on the street. We have seen evidence of
30 seconds.
social behaviour on Queensway Park, which is 2 minutes away. A syringe had to be disposed of a few weeks ago on there, and a small plastic bag with white powder residue seen recently. We fear that this is in easy reach for the young person to find and easily get into trouble, bringing it back onto the street and exposing our children to this lifestyle. Sum up, feel that there would be an increase in traffic involving noise and crime. We object to the change. However, if it does go ahead, we would want, as stated previously, as part of the planning conditions, that up to
I'm afraid you're out of time, Jane.
the driveway, the garage.
Yeah,
and
you have to stop.
on the street.
Do councillors have any questions of the speaker? Councillor Swinscoe.
Hello, Jane. You mentioned that you're concerned that a child with additional needs is going to cause such problems. What difference is a child in care to a child with parents living at a property will affect you?
I think there's a good chance that if the child was in their own home, the child would also have short breaks. So there would be some respite from neighbours if there were the issues, as I've said, with the noise and the type of communication. Whereas this is the child's home and they're being looked at. This is, if you like, it's not their short break as such, but it is in a social care setting. So the chances of ever having any kind of respite was that particular scenario, I feel, is probably a lot less than if the young person's living at home.
Thank you, though quite frankly, I can't see any difference.
Councillor Moxon.
Thank you, Chair. Has the company that's that's bought this and wanted to change the uses or are buying it, have they been in contact with any of the neighbours to go through what they're changing? Thank you.
Councillor Answer.
Thank you. Dave, will you just tell me, please, you're referring to where you live, the close there. How many people live there and how close are you to this property? Yeah. And how many properties are there close by? Thank you, Chairman.
Do councillors have any further questions of the speaker? Councillor Abbs.
Thank you. Hello, Jane. Just curious that you said people in children's homes would be subjected going to crime. I mean, I don't see that at all happening in most of those cases. I've been in a children's home since I was, God knows what, and I've never been in crime. So are you not picking them just because they're in a children's home?
I think you're probably a very good example of this, the system working then. But if you read the reports and if you read the police comment report, then it does certainly point to the fact that more children that are in care are prosecuted. I think that I can't remember what the exact number is, but 16% are more likely to be charged with a criminal offence.
And the second question is that I go to Prostown Arena, so I do know the area quite well. And Kingsway, where you found the needles and so forth, don't see that being an increase because you're having the children's home there. It could be a community problem as well, as don't you think?
Oh yes. It just means that it's close to the young person. You don't know what their background's going to be.
Okay, thank you.
Do councillors have any further questions? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
I think you said that on the cul-de-sac, most of the houses, I presume, are much the same, 3 and 4 bedroom detached houses, family houses.
Yes.
If one of the families in there decided to foster a child, the residents complain.
We'd be told. We find out, probably not.
Do you object if you did?
But it depends on how close it was and how much, if any, trouble the young person caused.
Are there any further questions? Not seen any indications. Thank you, Jane. I'd like to call David Price to the stand, applicant. Same sort of criteria, David. If you press the button and get your red light on, you've got 4 minutes to speak. Thank you. When you're ready.
Good evening, councillors. The application before you is seeking a certificate of lawful development on the basis that the proposed change of use 22 Grisdale Rise to a children's care home for one number child does not require planning permission, as it does not amount to a material change of use. Councillors will be aware that the assessment as to whether a certificate can be granted simply comes down to the question of whether planning permission is required or not. It's a matter of judgment. This judgment is based on the individual facts of the case, having regards to a legal precedent held in relevant case law, how this precedent has been applied by the council and the planning inspectors in similar instances. Any objections or concerns raised by members of the public regarding the merits of potential impacts of the proposed use, which include, amongst other things, impacts on amenity, impact on traffic safety and parking, crime and antisocial behaviour, suitability or otherwise of the property to facilitate the use, impacts on the overall character of the area, reduction in property value, cannot and should not be taken into account. Officers have concluded in the report that the proposed movements or occupation not give rise to a situation that is materially different to the existing situation. Providing care for one child, supported by a small team of staff, not lead to an increase in noise and disturbance, and would not give rise to a materially different level of activity than would be expected from the existing use. Thirdly, that overall, the proposed use of the property as a children's care home for one child is not materially different to a general residential use. Given the fact that the application amounts to a planning judgment as to whether planning permission is required or not, we would respectfully ask members to heed the advice of the officers and, in line with the officer recommendation, grant this certificate.
Thank you, David. Do members have any questions of the applicant? Councillor Moxon.
Yeah, on a similar vein to the question I asked the previous speaker, have you tried to contact the local residents, and if not, why not?
At the moment, no, we haven't. Our normal procedure is to actually hire the property by the planning permission and then put on a community event where we invite the whole community to come along, introduce them to the members of staff, show them the schematic of the company who's going to be running it, their background, their Ofsted regulations, their 15 years of experience. I kind of invite an open forum for generally 2 to 3 hours on a drop-in basis where they can ask us one-on-one questions. And we can kind of address any concerns that they've got at that point. That's our usual process.
Just come back. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that in the first place. You're creating clearly quite a lot of upset in the area. Why would you not try to alleviate that upset before we even got to this stage? I don't understand that.
That's just an internal process that we've currently got, but if that's feedback from this particular council, then we'll take that on board. So in the area.
Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
What's the average age of child that you would put in a home like this?
The average age is 10 to 12 years old.
Are there any further questions of the applicant? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, the property is secure. It's just like a normal residential house, but house a residential family as normal. This will operate as a normal residential house. It's got fences all the way around the property. It's a very secure property. At the bottom of the garden is grass. I don't know that the answer to that question.
Not yet, when it comes round to officers' questions. Are there any further questions of the applicant? No indication. Thank you, David. I invite Councillor Jackson, the ward councillor, to the podium. Jill. You've got 6 minutes, Councillor Jackson. There won't be any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can people hear me? So thank you for inviting me to speak. As the councillor for Kingsway Ward, I thought it would be helpful to explain to committee why I asked for this application to be brought. And the reason that I asked for this to come to committee rather than be determined by a delegated decision is because of the level of concern among residents, which you've already heard, and the high number of objections from the residents. Applications of this nature, as has already been pointed out, don't normally require the council to consult with residents. So my role in this process has been to ensure that the residents were informed about how they could register their concerns. So my role has been to support the residents to raise the issues that have already been explained. The current property owners sold their property with no knowledge of what the plans were going to be for the property going forward, and were surprised to be informed by their neighbours of the plans going forward. I think residents, a lot of residents were made aware of this issue through a social media post by media, and that generated quite a lot of anxiety. So I'd like to ask that, and this is similar to what the gentleman was saying earlier, the developer, I think there needs to be some thought as to how such applications might be managed going forward. Having said that, some of the concerns that residents have raised, I think, are important and do need a response. I've been on the street many times. I've dropped a few leaflets through, and I've been up and had a ride around. There is very limited on-street parking, and any increase in on-street parking would be quite inconvenient and potentially dangerous. However, it is fair to say that there's a very large double garage and a long drive which can accommodate a reasonable number of vehicles at any one time. I would like to ensure that the committee refer to the statement by the Notts Police Designing Out Crime Officer, who, while they acknowledged that there was no formal ability to consult on this application, they did feel it necessary to draw attention to some points which I would like committee to consider. And again, I think some of these have been raised. The police recommendation is that there is a good neighbour agreement provided should the application be approved. I think that's already been addressed and will be done as part of a community event. I think that will be an extremely good step forward should this application be approved, so that the residents can work together with the care home owners and the people that work there to ensure that things go smoothly. The police have raised concerns about the risk of any vulnerable child leaving, absconding from the home, and have commented on how that increased risk might generate an increased police presence, but that's already been mentioned. And residents have already spoken about their worries about the young person being vulnerable and involved in crime or the use of drugs. The property is secure, however, there are allotments at the back of the property, so I can sort of address that without directly answering the question. There is a fence, there is a small area to one side of the property that's a no man's land. It doesn't seem to belong to anybody, but there is quite a high fence there as well. It is in close proximity to Kingsway Park. It gets called different names. So I think there needs to be some assurance about how those risks might be managed by the people who are running the facility. I don't think I've got very much more to say because I think it's all been spoken about already. I think should committee approve this application, we would want to see some mitigations put in place to ensure that the residents are consulted, supported, and that they have people work with them so that their fears are not realised. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Jackson. All right. Do members have any questions of the officers? I think councillor Abbs, you or councillor Bell, was it, who said that you'd got a question? Sir.
Chairman, it's allowed, isn't it? Just a question about this. First of all, this lawful certificate that we're going to, or we're proposing to issue, is that a matter of course? Can it be refused? And as we've got one child, and they don't need any planning application or anything, could they increase that to probably 2 children or 3 children? And how would that certificate cover that? It's just a simple question like that.
Thank you for your question. If it's granted, is that me? Yeah, if it is granted. If it is granted, I'm lucky. Can you hear me? If it is granted, it would be for one child only. They won't be able to increase it to any more.
Just to come in on the matter of course question, applicants can put in a certificate of proposed or existing lawful use, and that's when the applicant is seeking comfort that planning permission is not required for the use that they want to do. So it is what we advise people to do if they're going to implement a permission, that there might be enforcement issues down the line. So it gives security to applicants if the certificate is granted. There is obviously the option to refuse a certificate, but it has to be on a matter of judgment and fact and degree. So what members are considering here is the change of use, because we all accept there is a change of use. Is the change of use from a normal, what we call normal C3 residential dwelling, is it to a children's home for one child? Is that going to be materially different? Is the C2 use, which is the children's home for one child, going to be materially different to a traditional C3 residential use?
Were there any other questions of us? Councillor Moxon.
Yeah. What's going on from that? Who makes that judgment as to that's the case, that you actually don't need planning permission to do it, you just need to this certificate of usage? And then at what point does it become it needs planning permission? What's the differential? Because we've had a few come to this committee where it has been planning permission that's been applied for. So what exactly is different about this that makes it that it doesn't need that?
Okay, so a judgment is a judgment, and it can change, obviously, depending on the situation that you're in. As officers, we make a planning judgment based on our assessment of the site, the information that's been put into us, and also on case law. So there's quite a lot of case law in respect of these types of applications. There isn't a hard and fast rule that I can give you because every site's different and each one is considered on its own merits. But in this circumstance, we do not think, looking at the case law and looking at the site itself, that there would be a material change of use that would require planning permission.
Okay, if I could just come back on that.
Come back, Councillor Moxon.
Sorry, so what would make this one need to have planning permission? Would it be having 2 children in it, for example?
We'd have to assess that with the facts before us. We can only assess what we've got in front of us. But if it helps, I mean, I know I'm taking it to the other extreme, but if, for example, you had a terrace property with no parking, and say, for example, it wanted to be for 4 children in a care home, I think it's fair to say that that would raise concerns from officers in terms of probably issues such as parking and perhaps noise and disturbance. But what this isn't, it's not a planning application, it's a certificate. So this is the first stage in the process, really. So if the certificate is granted, members are accepting that planning permission is not required for the proposed use. If the certificate is refused, members would be saying that you have to apply for planning permission, and that will be subject to another planning application. But obviously, the applicant does have a right of appeal if it's refused. But the certificate is quite controlled, so it would state on the certificate how many children could be living in the house.
So I mean, just follow that up. Members have to be quite clear that they're not here to consider what might be or what could happen in the future. This is, you've got to determine it on the basis of 1 child in this dwelling, and that's before you tonight. So don't consider what might be, what could be in the future. That would be looked at that time. We've got to look at what's before us tonight.
Are there any further questions of the officers? No indications, thank you. Could I have a proposer, seconder, proposed to Councillor Swinscoe, seconded Councillor Tempest Mitchell. Put the application to the vote. Comments? Any comments? Any further comments? Councillor Swinscoe.
I'm pleased that the applicant is going to have a meeting so that it can put any fears that residents may have at rest. However, I must say I am disappointed with the amount of objections that local residents have had looked after children, and particularly the comments that they're more likely to commit crimes, and yet they object to a home which will provide a stable background for the children, which will surely lessen the risk of this. I will be supporting the applicant.
I kind of agree, I totally agree with Councillor Swinscoe. And whilst I understand that people who have lived in a nice little cul-de-sac for 10, 20 years or so might be concerned that a 10-year-old child might be moving on to their cul-de-sac. I was a copper for nearly 20 years and I've been a teacher for nearly 20 years. So I've probably dealt with quite a few vulnerable children. One thing that they need is a settled home. It's a saying, it takes a village to bring up a child. And it sounds like you've got a little village on your cul-de-sac. Maybe that child might need you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Comments. I think the plans before us, I think, are quite modest for compared to similar children's homes that we've seen before us, and considering what you might be able to put a property of that size. Children in situations like this need stable places to live, and I'm quite glad to see plans are quite sensible. So again, I'll be to support this. Child that lives in there, kind of really bringing so yeah, so massive plan.
Councillor Moxon.
Thank you. I'm a little bit disappointed to hear that some other councillors seem to almost like not care what local residents might feel, and are disappointed with what residents might feel. That's their feelings. I think the issues here have possibly been perpetuated by the developer not having tried to alleviate it by contacting all the local residents before it got to this stage. So it's almost like whipped up a frenzy within the local community of like worst case scenarios of what could happen, and I feel that could have been fairly easily alleviated by the developer actually reaching out to these people before the permission is granted rather than afterwards. It's, you know, once I think probably residents would feel that once permission's been granted for something like this, they've almost got no comeback to it anyway. So, you know, all the promises made by a developer can all be thrown in the bin, and they don't necessarily have to reach out to local residents. So that would be quite a foolish thing to do. But I do feel that, you know, a lot of the issues on this and a lot of the ill feeling towards it has been perpetuated by the developer, and they really should reconsider how they go about these and try and reach out to local residents before permission is applied for, or even during the course of it, as opposed to afterwards.
Any further comment? Councillor Abbs?
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to make a comment that all councillors, what communities, as part of the community, not listening to people. We do. And there was one child going into a community that he or she needs. I don't see an issue here whatsoever. I will be supporting the application.
Any further comment? Seeing none. Right. I now put the motion to the vote, and please show those in favour by show of hands. All those in favour? Any abstentions? Any against? Thank you. That was a unanimous decision. So planning application reference 2024-0137 CLPD 22 Rysdale Rise, Forest Town. Application for lawful development certificate under the Town and Country Planning Act, England Order 2015. Change of use from existing dwelling use class C3 to a children's care home for one number young person use class C2 has been granted. Thank you very much. And some useful comments made there by everyone. I'd just like the public leave the meeting before I carry on. Right, thank you. I'll move on to item 5, which is if there's no typos, planning application reference 2023-0028 full Squires Lodge, Nettleworth Manor, Leeming Lane North, Mansfield Woodhouse, one number 3-bedroom house with vehicle access from an existing rear garden access. Could I ask the officer to make a report, please? Yep.
Yes, in terms of updated information, received an amended block plan which showed vehicle access against visibility signs, dimensions, passing bay. Amended comments have been received today on the revised plan and maintaining their objection basis that does not provide passing places and large
based to the UK. So which is outside the application site. So in terms of the site itself, this is a part of the Ethelworth Manor estate, situated in the countryside, the Underwood House. Access is from the north, Road, over the A60. The access to the site of the Southampton Scotland, and restricted by areas surrounding the site itself accommodate several buildings which may previously site, including stables. Given their historic association structures, which include such as the host dwellings and Wales Lodge represented. The application site currently forms part of the garden area in living squares, seeking to erect a new dwelling in the area. The fence will also be smaller area and fence going in dark green. You can see on the plan in front of you, from establishment dwelling, chain, steeply access. So, there's the development. We passively access. Section of hedgerow built up in vehicular access to the site now situated site lies with the countryside where policy is to the student to respect to marriage. It's rated into the surrounding country. It's important. Just consider its policy. Site is currently used used in the site was previously occupied. It would be whether these forms of development also fail outside. In terms of the site itself, it's largely open and only 2 garden sheds and some to store on. Additional boundary hedge also adds to the burden character of the site and aids the transition between the site itself and surrounding side. Developed character of the land also maintains views and approaches on access track. Switches dwelling would be located on this overland main complex and would extend the majority of the width and depth, introducing intrusive countryside. Scale and proximity to so dominates wider continue looking at its shallow movement. So cultivating the to steep some adjacent to these reasons to conclude adjacent to non-designated trees and bushes. In addition, there would also be some, as previously mentioned, some concerns about access in the sites.
Thank you for your report. I believe we've got a speaker. Could I invite Alexander Brooks Ball to the podium? Okay, if you'd like to turn your mic on, it should light up red. And you've got 4 minutes, Alexander. Thank you. When you're ready.
Good afternoon or good evening, committee members. So I'm Alex Buxball. I'm speaking in support of the application. And I'm the architectural designer for Mr. and Mrs. Thompson of Squires Lodge. Squires Lodge has been a family home for many years. As a multi-generational family, they've been an integral part of the local community of Nettleworth Manor and the surrounding area. They've run a very successful local business and have lived in Woodhouse all their lives. Moving out of the area to build their dream just isn't simply an option. Proposed development, I believe, fits subtly within the varied styles, shapes and sizes which are encompassed by the track road boundary of Nettleworth Manor settlement and not in the open countryside. To answer the point raised by the Conservation Officer and the Plan Officer, the Garden of Squires Lodge has never been an open green space. It has had various cow sheds, it's been a holding area for cattle, and it's most recently been used as an area designated for the storage of building materials prior to it becoming a garden, and which now has some outbuildings on it. Provide evidence to support there is sizable areas of concrete and hard standing below the surface of the land. The ecologist report noted that the ground is made up ground. I must reiterate as well, that this proposal does not fall within a conservation area. Under policy S31, regarding impact to non-designated heritage assets, Ford Garden next door is not fully covered by the development. It is partially obscured, yes, by the positioning of the house. And the wall can be seen from many other elevations and is partly obscured by other buildings around the settlement and will also be obscured when it's having its own future development, which it has outlined planning permission for a dwelling house. The proposed development will not obscure the views of Squires Lodge to the open countryside outside of the settlement boundary. Under policy H5, it refers to, is it within the settlement boundary? Yes, the boundary is the track that surrounds the whole of the settlement. It is within that. Is it a high standard of design? It was noted in the case officer's report that it would not adversely impact on sunlight, outlook, daylight of into the neighbouring properties, and it does exceed the minimum space standards and will provide and retain the appropriate amenity for space for future occupiers. It should not cause adverse impact on the area. I believe it wouldn't. It's a barn-style design, which is designed to be an L shape, similar to pretty much all the properties on the site, which are L-shaped barns. Shouldn't be no adverse impact on the highway. The highway is a track. If anybody's been driven down there, it's less than 20 miles an hour. It's quite a fair few potholes, and it's actually maintained by all the residents, and the residents are all aware of what the road is like. And in my opinion, H5 policy, we actually met that to a high standard. We ask you to view this as a particular site that has potential to be a beautifully designed, well-built, self-built home that is in keeping with the surroundings. It's a barn design, and the other buildings on the settlement are similar, and it would not directly, in my opinion, harm the open countryside around it. It would just look like a barn house. We also would like to point out that if the land was left unattended and left unattended by the applicant, then it would be a blight on the settlement and the landscape of the area due to the fact that nothing can grow on that area. We are also open to having a condition to provide a build management plan prior to starting work, as we do know that some of the objections from neighbours were about noise and dust, etc. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexander. Do members have any questions of the speaker? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
Presentation, Alexander. I think you said at the beginning, it's a subtle change.
Yes.
Yeah, can you just describe why you describe it as a subtle change?
I believe, obviously, any development where you take building anything on land, whether it be small or large, is going to be different. So it's very hard to use the word subtle. The means of subtle, I mean, is the fact that material finishes similar to what's already on the site. There's a lot of stone barns. There's also some red brick intended to, with material finishes on this property, is a mixture between the two. It would, in my opinion, subtly integrate into that environment. Yes, it is on the edges. It is, the whole settlement is in the countryside, but it's on the inside of the track. It can be seen from anywhere in the countryside, and it's going to look like a barn that's been converted. It's not going to look like a big white Grand Designs box, and that's why I believe it's subtle, because as with many of the other properties, they're quite large and some quite small.
Any further questions? Councillor Abbs.
Cleared right. The roads are refused. Because of the passing bay is not big enough.
So yeah, passing bay is believed to not be big enough for passenger vehicles and so on. I believe that they are deeming this road based on 30-mile-per-hour road. It's, yes, it's a non-designated track road. It's not a main highway. The traffic that goes around there is very slow. Parking bay we put in, it's not a single track road, but it's not a double road that would take two cars oncoming at each other. So in my opinion, a setting like that is doable. We would welcome, if it was a condition, to redesign that element if it was to help. And the same with the visibility space. We've opened that right up, but it's not a pedestrian walk area. Yes, there is a footpath around. It's a very slow moving road. If it was a high speed road on a cul-de-sac, 30 mile an hour, stands necessity for even bigger. It's not a through road either.
Yeah, I know. See, the thing I'm looking at is roads are also obscured as well, so things can happen. It's a bit more clear, I think. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
In terms of size, I'm looking at an aerial photograph of the of that basically now. What's the square footage or meterage of this new subtle building?
I haven't got that to hand about to be able to get to that. My head, I've not got it written down to be able to say exactly the square meterage.
Okay, so I've just done a quick calculation of the dining room and kitchen. 23 meters by 6.6 meters. Well, I've done 6 meters, 138 square meters just for the kitchen, the dining room area. Still call it subtle.
Yes, for a multi-generational living family, the rooms are all designed over double story because there is more than one adult living. As we are now moving into a world of multi-generational living, we're not now just having a house, the kids move out at 18. We've got adults, more than just, setting out and starting out their own families. And they are a family that have got two older sons that have moved back, and space they require for a growing family. That's why we've got ample parking as well for people visiting. So yeah, for a 4-bedroomed house, you would probably argue it's quite large. You only build a dream house once.
Any further questions of the speaker? No one's indicated. Thank you. Thanks very much, Alexander. Do you have any questions of the officer? Councillor Tempest Mitchell.
In terms of, there's the issues with the road. A few of the bits. It's the main objection from the council, the size of it in comparison with everything else around it.
Yes, essentially, there's two elements really. Yes.
Any further questions of the officer? Councillor Answer.
Chairman, would you not say that if this was going onto a street scene anywhere else in the district, would you not say that there was out of character with the street scene?
Any further questions, Councillor Clay?
So essentially, so essentially that's on there and it's
Any further questions? No one's indicated. All right. Could I have a proposer and seconder, which is to refuse planning permission on this application? Councillor Tempest Mitchell and Councillor Abbs. Any comments? Nope. I'm going to move straight to a vote then. Unfortunately, Councillor Swinscoe, you left the meeting, so you won't be able to vote on this. Thank you. Could I have a show of hands then? Those in favour of the recommendation, which would be to refuse planning permission. Any abstentions? Any against? That's unanimous then. So Planning application reference 2023-0028 full Squires Lodge, Nettleworth Manor, Lean Lane North, Mansfield Woodhouse, one number 3-bedroomed house with vehicle access from existing rear garden, has been refused planning permission. Thank you. I'll move on to agenda item 6. Which is planning application reference 2024-0083 the Linear Group Limited, 4 Bellamy Road, Mansfield, erection of a warehouse facility with associated offices and parking. Could I ask the officer to make a report, please?
So we're not. Schedule. So two conditions 2027. Essentially, requirements, Asian conditions, road details, events adjacent to the way and patient conditions. Supervision cycles has been shown. 31 ended. Well, those processes are large, standing. Itself, so as it is and with the road site itself slopes down. Recently granted demolition, which currently sits on the site. Demolitions and still resides on the site. This application seeks to erect replacement providing warehousing, design offices and ancillary office space. It's a 3-story building and totally 5,000 meters space, 2,000 meters. In terms of the principles of the total replacement warehouse, in addition, the development will generate an additional 75 jobs, establishment that negotiate suitable to these developments. Do build a similar position city. It would be sizable setback. But the thing it is, site for it. Access, highway safety. To in the transport assessment negotiated. So acknowledge the site. About Oops.
Thank you for your report. We don't have any speakers on this application, so do members have any questions of the officer? Non-indicated. I have a proposer and seconder. Proposed Councillor Swinscoe, seconded Councillor Moxon. Do we have any comments on the application? No one's indicating. I move to a vote then, please. Can we all show of hands, those in favour of the approval? Any abstentions? Any against? No? That's unanimous. Thank you again, committee. So planning application reference 2024-0083 full, Linear Group Limited, 4 Bellamy Road, Mansfield, erection of a warehouse facility with associated offices and parking has been granted permission. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 7, where I'm going to have to leave. So I invite Councillor Swinscoe to the podium.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 2024-0162 PNSCOU. Can we have the officer's report, please? Thank you. There are no public speakers for this item. Okay, sorry. Does anybody have any questions for the officer? Thank you. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Abbs, second by Councillor Clay. Does anybody have any comments? Thank you. Can put it to the vote. All those for the officer's recommendation. Is any abstentions? Any against? Thank you. It's unanimous. So planning application 2024-0162 PNSCOU is passed. Thank you.
Very much. Please.
Oh, no. Thank you, committee. I'll move on to agenda item 8. Which is planning application reference 2023-0257 full former gasworks, Phoenix House, Lime Tree Place, Mansfield, environmental improvement works, remediation of land. Would I invite the officer to make the report, please?
To the presentation, members are advised that the local lead flood authority was reconsulted on the 18th of April, advising them of the fact that this is a major application, and that was for clarification purposes. However, no response has been received, and therefore their response is as per the committee report. This application seeks permission for remediation works to remove areas identified to contain gross contamination, including excavation of existing ground, lining with suitable geotextile membranes, and backfilling with suitable imported materials to match existing ground levels. It has been brought before Planning Committee as it is defined as a major application. The site comprises of the former gasworks owned by National Grid and is accessed off Lime Tree Place. The site is split into two areas. Northern, which is largely vacant with car parking, and Southern is currently leased to Notts Police and features a car park and a building known as Phoenix House. The site is located within an area of green strategic infrastructure as defined in the local plan. The site is bounded by a warehouse to the north, beyond which is the A6191. To the east is a car park and Mansfield Police Station. A mix of commercial and leisure premises and housing abuts the site to the south, with the River Mourne forming the western boundary. There have been no statutory objections to the proposal subject to conditions, and no public comments have been received. The main issues are as follows. In terms of the principle of development, the site is within the urban boundary, and its remediation is supported by Local Plan Policy NE3 and the NPPF. In principle, the proposal is considered to be acceptable. The applicant has submitted a remediation strategy to ensure that the remediated site poses no unacceptable risk in terms of contamination, and this has been assessed by Environmental Health and the Environment Agency, both of whom have no objections subject to planning conditions. But ultimately, delivering a safe site does lie with the developer, as stated in the NPPF. In terms of residential amenity, the site is in a mixed-use area. The applicant has proposed a series of measures to ensure that residential amenity is protected during development, and these will be controlled by way of planning condition, which is considered to be acceptable. Flood risk and contamination have been assessed in this application by the various statutory consultees. The Environment Agency has been in discussions with the applicant in respect of the application, and any issues have been resolved subject to planning conditions. Works will also require an additional environmental permit from the Environment Agency, which is understood to have been granted. Flooding and contamination issues are considered acceptable subject to conditions. In terms of ecology, this application is not subject to biodiversity net gain requirement as it was submitted prior to the 12th of February. Whilst the site is within an area of strategic green infrastructure, it is considered that this is not a typical development scheme. It is an application to remediate the land, and therefore, given its existing use, and with the proposed use being the same at this point in time, it would be difficult and unreasonable to require that policy IN2 is fully adhered to. This application is in essence making the whole site more environmentally friendly by disposing of contamination and thus improving the environment. It is important, however, to ensure that there is no harm to ecology and biodiversity throughout the development process, and accordingly, a detailed ecological appraisal has been submitted, which includes further recommendations which are supported by Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust. A further condition is recommended in this regard, the submission of a construction and environmental management plan. Finally, in terms of highway considerations, the main consideration is the displacement of car parking during the development. However, a traffic management plan has been submitted to demonstrate that parking can be accommodated, and this, along with the overall application, has been assessed by the Highway Authority, who raised no objections. In conclusion, the site is a contaminated town centre site, which would benefit from remediation to make it fit for purpose, giving it future potential to be brought back into beneficial use. Close to the River Mourne, this is an environmentally sensitive area in need of remediation, and this will be done in a sensitive manner. The officer recommendation is therefore one of conditional consent. Chairman.
Thank you for that report. There are no speakers, so do members have any questions of the officers? No. Can I ask for a proposer and seconder for the Councillor Bell and Councillor Clay? Any comments on this application? No comment. Can I move to the vote then, please? Can you all show those in favour of granting plan permission? Any abstentions? Any against? No. Thank you, committee. That's another unanimous decision. So. Planning application reference 2023-0257 Former Gasworks, Phoenix House, Lime Tree Place, Mansfield, environmental improvement works, remediation of land has been granted permission. Thank you. Item 9, appendices for Human Rights Act and use class appendices 1 and 2. These are for noting. Can I have a show of hands that you've all noted those? Thank you. And finally, item 10, the planning appeal decisions 1st of April to the 23rd of April 24. Again, for noting, there were no appeal decisions received during that period. I have a show of hands and that was noted. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, committee. That concludes the business, but I had a bit of a surprise tonight when I found out that tonight was Julie's last